So if you guys have been on the internet at all today, I'm sure that you've already heard about the rumored state of play for next week. Coming from renowned leaker Nate the Hate over on Twitter, someone just asked him straight up if there was going to be a state of play next week, and he simply responded with, next week. This was further corroborated by Jeff Grubb over on Game Mess Mornings, where he did kind of hint at the idea that we'd probably be getting a state of play next week.
Like I've been saying for a while, expect one before the end of September. It's not that 007 one that had already happened. There's a separate one.
Also, considering that we have the Tokyo Game Show next week, and Sony kind of historically has done state of plays in September, I wouldn't be super surprised to see this actually happening. Obviously, the last state of play we got was all about IO Interactive's upcoming 007 game, First Light. And then before that, we had a Ghost of Yotei showcase back in July. Considering there's quite a few Sony first-party games, like Insomniac's Wolverine, that we've yet to even get an announcement for, and kind of this slow rollout of PlayStation first-party titles since the PS5 launched, I think expectations are pretty high for Sony to kind of come out and give us some more information about what we can expect to be playing on our PlayStation 5 by the end of this year and maybe into next. But since there's quite a few kind of rumored games that have been swirling around over on forums recently, I figured it'd be fun to kind of dig through those and see what the likelihood of these games being at the state of play would be. Without further ado, let's dig into that. So first up, we do kind of have this rumored Drakengard remaster or remake potentially coming down the line. Dusk Golem, another kind of renowned leaker over on the internet, said this in a Discord message. So I love Drakengard. I blabbered about it. Someone was kind to share with me the random Drakengard OST drop yesterday is tied to an announcement happening later this month. I wasn't given a whole lot of context, but I'm guessing they meant at a state of play or TGS. I'm very curious as a big Drakengard fan. I don't know if it's Drakengard or Drakengard. I gotta admit I've never played these games, but I do know that they're made by Platinum Games, and I'm pretty sure we're done by Yoko Taro of Nier Automata fame. Considering the other Drakengard games were PlayStation exclusives and Nier is generally tied to the PlayStation, I could definitely see this being an announcement they would make at a state of play. Obviously, we don't really have much to go on here though, other than this Discord message from Dusk Golem saying that he heard from somebody that this was going to be a real thing. I personally would love if we got some sort of remaster or collection that came to the PlayStation for these. I've been wanting to play these for a long time, but they're kind of tied to older consoles and I just never really got around to playing them. I don't know much about these games, but I do know that they directly tie into the Nier franchise, and I'm pretty sure were kind of rough to play on the old consoles back in the day. So I could definitely see some sort of remaster, remake, or collection being a really nice touch for people who are already interested in the Nier franchise, waiting on the new Nier game to come out, and kind of having this as an appetizer before that. Next up, we got Bungie's Marathon. If you guys remember, this game was indefinitely shelved earlier this year when it was found that there was stolen content being used in the game, as well as just kind of rough reception around the game as a whole. I personally do not think we will be seeing this game quite yet. I still think it's kind of on the back burner, and they're probably still making changes and running through all sorts of tests to make sure that it's kind of ready to come back into the public view. That being said, Zuhad Ali over at the Game Post did just post an exclusive story with a bunch of new changes that they've made apparently to the game since the closed alpha earlier this year. I'll leave a link in the description if you guys want to read more into that, but I personally wasn't very excited about this game in the first place, and I think we're a little bit too soon off the heels of all that drama for them to want to say much more about this game quite yet. Next up, it sounds like we might have some sort of Crash Bandicoot game coming down the pipeline here soon. Someone over on Reddit had noticed that the official Twitter page for Crash Bandicoot updated their bio recently to say, "I don't chase trends, I crash them." Obviously, we've seen this tactic before. It would sort of allude to the idea that we'd be seeing something new coming out of Crash Bandicoot here soon, and considering that Toys for Bob kind of split up from Activision and Microsoft earlier this year, I wouldn't be super surprised to see that they'd be going over to Sony for this announcement. They did release that weird multiplayer Crash Bandicoot game, I want to say earlier this year or at the end of last year, and I don't think it did super hot, but I do know that the single player Crash Bandicoot titles still sell pretty well, and I would be happy to see something new come out of that, as long as it was some sort of mainline game. Another game we've been hearing quite a bit about is this Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag remake or remaster, whatever they kind of decide to go with here. And we've been getting, and even though we haven't gotten any sort of official announcement from Ubisoft yet, there has been tons and tons of talk and commotion around this potential release. The YouTube channel Zhu Media Magazine did post a video just yesterday with tons of new information regarding this game, as well as Jeff Grubb also talking about this game quite a few times at this point.
Start here with Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag Remake. Has all but been confirmed after artist interview. This is from Alex Coe at DualShockers. just a few days ago, Ubisoft seemed to be teasing an Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag remake, which has been rumored to be in development. And really, frankly, we've known about this. We kind of know what's happening, but sounds like things are moving over there.
It definitely seems like at the very least this game is in the works and there is some sort of planned release for it. And considering we're getting tons of new information about this unreleased game, as well as Assassin's Creed games kind of historically getting leaked before they get announced, I definitely would not be surprised to see this show up at the State of Play next week, or even just the regular Tokyo Game Show. One of the bigger pieces of news that's been coming out about this Zoom Media exclusive is the idea that they're going to be completely and utterly getting rid of anything that you do outside of the Animus in that game. If you remember specifically in Black Flag, there was these kind of first-person moments where you'd get out of the Animus and walk around a fake Ubisoft studio, solving mysteries and things that related to things happening in the Animus. All of that's gone now, which I personally am happy about because I never really liked that part of Assassin's Creed all that much, and I don't think I'm alone in feeling that way. Sounds like there's gonna be tons of other changes and quality of life improvements that they'll be making to Assassin's Creed Black Flag, including bringing it up to speed with some of the more modern Assassin's Creed games coming out, kind of adding some more of those RPG elements or gear for you to equip, stuff like that. It's also apparently built in Ubisoft's new Anvil engine, so I'd expect it to look pretty damn good. Once again, I personally would not be surprised at all to see this Assassin's Creed game show up in the State of Play next week. It's almost like par for the course at this point for Ubisoft games to get leaked before they're announced. And moving on, we got Intergalactic, that new Naughty Dog game that we kind of got teased at the end of last year. I personally think there's zero chance of seeing this game at the State of Play next week, considering that we just saw this at the end of last year, and it's still pretty soon for us to maybe see any more about it. And I'd imagine that they might want kind of a better spot for that, right? A State of Play that's all about Intergalactic, something like that. If we did see anything from this game, it might be some sort of small gameplay tease, but I really do think this is kind of way too soon for us to see more about this. Obviously, we'll kind of just have to wait and see what happens. I don't have all the information, and if this does end up being one of those bigger PlayStation showcases, maybe they'll squeeze something in there. I don't know. Something that I think is far more likely for us to see is this rumored God of War Metroidvania game coming out of Santa Monica Studios. Tom Henderson was the first to say that there was some type of God of War spinoff in the works. Tom did clarify this later over on Twitter, saying that it'd probably be a smaller project than what he was thinking in the first place, something more like a Metroidvania or some sort of 2.5D game. Jeff Grubb not only responded to that tweet agreeing with Tom, but he's also mentioned it a few times, like on Last of Nintendogs a few months ago. So yeah, word on the street is that it's some sort of Metroidvania 2.5D type game where you play as a younger Kratos and it's kind of set in Greece. I definitely like the idea of having some sort of smaller God of War game to play in the meantime while we're waiting for whatever other big thing that Santa Monica Studios is working on. I definitely think God of War is a pretty good candidate for that type of thing. We obviously saw Prince of Persia do this type of thing and that worked really well for them, and God of War kind of, traditionally has a lot of gear and upgrades that you collect throughout the runtime of the game. Also, Metroidvanias are pretty hot right now with the release of Silksong, so I think somebody over at Santa Monica must have been reading the tea leaves, because I think this is a great call. These next two games from Square Enix are definitely more of my hopes and dreams type games, but I'd love to see Final Fantasy IX Remake and maybe even Kingdom Hearts 4 make an appearance at this showcase. Honestly, I've kind of given up on the idea that Final Fantasy IX Remake is a thing at all, or if it was, it's probably been shelved at this point. I'm pretty sure we probably would have heard about that. It was the anniversary of Final Fantasy IX this year, as well as the Final Fantasy Magic card thing kind of blowing up a few months ago. I think we've kind of passed the time that we would probably have heard about that at this point, but I'm still maybe holding out the slightest of hopes that we might see it there. I think if we don't see it here, we can definitely say for certain that this game is not coming out anytime soon or ever, but there's still a smidgen of me that would like to see that. Kingdom Hearts 4, on the other hand, I think is a lot more in line with something we could potentially see out of State of Play, but I still think it's maybe a little bit too early for us to actually hear any more news on that. Not to mention Square Enix just has tons of giant RPGs slated for release this year, so I'd be pretty surprised if we actually heard about this here. In my opinion, I think Square Enix is probably waiting to get some of these other titles on the shelves before they actually start talking about Kingdom Hearts 4, but who knows? I was definitely pretty disappointed with Kingdom Hearts 3, so I'm definitely not holding out hope for this by any means, but I'm always willing to give it another go, and I hope that they, if nothing else, make some changes to the 4th game to kind of put it back in line with what fans like me would expect from that type of game. I think if anything, we're probably going to see Square Enix release something like Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 before we will see Kingdom Hearts 4. Next up, we got Yakuza Kiwami 3. This was actually accidentally leaked by RGG earlier this week when someone had noticed a reference to it on one of their web pages. Obviously, RGG is having their summit at TGS next week as well, so it might be a little more likely that we'd see Yakuza at their showcase rather than PlayStation's, but it wouldn't be the first time that we saw some sort of tease for a game that would show up in another showcase, right? That being said, this game is definitely coming out, so whether or not it's going to be at the State of Play or not is neither here nor there necessarily. We will be hearing about Yakuza Kiwami 3 in the next week, but I am kind of wondering if we'll actually see it show up at the State of Play. Second to last, we got Saros by Housemarque. If you guys remember, it was that game that was teased at the Game Awards at the end of last year, and it's supposed to be kind of a riff on their other game, Returnal, from what I understand. It also has Rahul Kohli in it. He plays the main character. Considering we haven't heard much about this game since February, and it was always slated to be a 2026 game, as well as Housemarque mentioning over on their Twitter page back in April that we would be seeing some sort of extended gameplay for this game this year, I could definitely see this being at the State of Play next week. I could definitely see them doing some sort of trailer for this game, maybe even like a release date, and then doing some bigger State of Play to actually do an extended gameplay deep dive on the game later this year before release. And last but not least, we got Insomniac's Wolverine. I do think if anything is true on this list, this is probably the one we're going to hear about. This game is also slated for a 2026 release, and we haven't heard about it getting pushed back or anything like that. And Sony kind of needs like a really big blockbuster game for the holidays coming up. I also personally am extremely excited for whatever Insomniac has to show us with this. I'm hoping it's a bit more M-rated as compared to like the Spider-Man games that they're kind of known for. Not to mention there's just a lot of questions about like what this is going to look like, how it's going to play, and so on and so forth. And like I said, considering there's just been so much hype and talk around this game recently, I definitely wouldn't be surprised if we saw this show up next week. If you have any arguments or oppositions to what I've said so far, let me know, and I'd be more than happy to discuss down there. I'm Brandon. Thanks for watching, and have a kick-ass week.